listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey, it's Jason here with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show, my friend. Thank you for being here, letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. Wanted to make a quick announcement as we go into this one, pulling this one out from the archives because it's worth a re-listen if you have heard it before. It's been a little while. And if you haven't, this is one of those conversations that's stuck with me because I think there are a lot of takeaways that you can apply to your life right now. And when I reread a book, which I often do, some of my favorite books, they always hit me in a different way later on. And I thought this episode was an example of that. It might hit you differently today if you've heard it before. In it, you're going to hear a conversation with my buddy, Derek Loudermilk. He shares 5 what he calls, quote, thought reversals that can help you perhaps see things in a different way, an opportunity for reframing how you're thinking about current challenges, perhaps decisions you have to make, whether it's work-related, life-related, maybe travel-related. So in this conversation, you're going to hear some really thoughtful prompts to help you check in with your internal dialogue and how it might be shaping your current reality. A few ideas that might push you outside of your usual way of thinking, possibly even open up new paths, and a grounded take on how awareness, self-inquiry, and yes, even struggle are a part of what helps us grow into the next version of ourselves. I'm not sure where you land on the woo-woo scale. Just go into this one with an open mind. And stick around on the back end. I'll share a little bit about the idea of, quote, becoming the hero, something I think is worth kind of mentioning one last time as you go out of this one with some new ideas and thoughts and perhaps some new perspectives. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Derek. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the other side, my friend. Cheers. Are you drinking mate?
I'm drinking mate and it's a mix of runa, which is a guayusa leaf, which is another Amazonian plant.
That's awesome. Have you spent time in Argentina?
I've never been to South America, but my ex-girlfriend got this for me. And so the guayusa plant is an interesting story. I read this guy's book, Tyler Gage. He started this energy drink company, but basically he was down there doing ayahuasca. And before he could do ayahuasca, he just sort of did a diet where he was drinking this tea. It's just a caffeinated tea, but he started getting visions from the tea, and it's considered to be a sort of a master plant that sort of unlocks your ability to use other plant medicines. And so he figured out a way to bring it to the States. He figured out how to dry it and export it and start a whole new supply chain to bring this tea to the U.S. And it's a really interesting story. So that's what I'm drinking.
Yeah. I'm drinking Nescafe instant coffee.
Hey-o.
So usually my midday beverage of choice when I'm too lazy to actually grind beans and brew a cup of coffee. It's been my go-to as of late.
Yeah, I used to work for Nestle, by the way.
Oh, really?
Briefly.
Yeah, I haven't had any hallucinations yet or any breakthroughs spiritually, but hey, man, you never know. Well, I should give you a little bit of an intro here as we're probably going to, I know we're going to have a lot to talk about. And this has been a long time coming. I think we've been trying to get this on the books for, way too long. I think I got sucked into the kid black hole, and you maybe got sucked into the kid black hole, and we were all kind of, then the COVID thing. Anyway, we're here now. I'm with Derek Loudermilk, who helps coaches, healers, and course creators become best-selling authors and global thought leaders. He's got a podcast, right? The Derek Loudermilk Show. Is that what it's called now? It was formerly The Art of Adventure, correct?
Rebranded this year.
Yes, and you can check him out at derekloudermilk.com. Anyway, welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
Jason, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Because I saw on your website that you said you can like grow a beard in the week, and you have a beautiful big beard now. I'm wondering, did you get that last week or?
It's funny. I went, in the winter I tend to grow a beard and get lazy, and it just happens that I went to the barber last week, and we had to wear a mask. So he was like, "Okay, you hold the mask on half of your face, and I'll trim this half, and then hold it on the other half." So this is very awkward sort of like dance where he's trying to shape my beard while me staying masked.
Doing the beard dance. You're in St. Louis, correct?
Yeah, and you're one of the few people that said, "Oh, I actually really like St. Louis. I grew up here. It's a hidden gem. There's a ton to do. Actually, a ton of outdoor stuff as well. So it's nice."
I've done a couple float trips around the Lou. I can't remember exactly where. I feel like a lot of the Midwest can be a bit of a hidden gem in some ways. It's kind of like the place a lot of people just drive through to get to the mountains or to get to the East Coast. That's generalizing, I think, a large swath of road trippers.
It's really fascinating. We have this terrain. It's kind of like karst topography, like Ha Long Bay in Vietnam, but it's just below the surface. So we have a ton of caves, which is why the Budweiser was here, because they have all these caves. But that also means there's a lot of springs. So we have these spring-fed rivers, which you can canoe year-round, and they made it into sort of a national wilderness park. There's just tons and tons of rivers in the Ozarks. It's really cool and unique.
How long have you been back there? Because you were a digital nomad for a while, right?
Yeah, we've been here a year, and my wife, we were in Portugal. We were living in Portugal, and maybe someone who's been on your show, Natalie Sisson, she had a place in Portugal, and she was like, "You can stay at my house," and it was super cool. She sold it right after we.
Wait, did you stay in the beach house?
Yeah, in the beach. Yep.
Because we stayed in Natalie's. She had like a place in the city at one point there, so we stayed there actually.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Small world.
Great. Natalie, thanks for having houses everywhere.
Shout out to Natalie.
So we were going to move to Romania. We were going to move to Transylvania, and I was super excited about it. And my wife was like, "I'm so tired of lugging all this luggage," because now we have 2 kids. And so she said, she also really wanted a garden. And that's one of those things that when you look at what are the factors of people that live over 100, gardening is like one of the top 3 factors.
Oh, really? And what are the other 2? Do you remember?
Well, there's a handful. There's like community, like having friends that you see every day in person. There's walking and gardening. There's some form of spirituality or like religious communion that's in there. There's a handful of things, but also diet is some factor. Sort of like a mostly vegetarian. But anyway, she really wanted to garden. I like growing tomatoes, so we decided to come back to St. Louis. This is where I grew up. And it's funny enough, my kid is going to the exact same elementary school that I went to with some of the same teachers still. And they just like were blown away when I dropped him off on the first day. They're like, are you when you were a kid? They're like, who?
Was that at all surprising to you? I don't know, when the reality set in of like, holy crap, I'm living back in the same exact place I grew up after. I've been traveling all over. And I mean, you've done a lot of traveling. You've seen some amazing things, had incredible experiences. I'm sure we'll hear some of them today. It's not every traveler that some, I guess, end up back where they grew up, and others are like, there's no way I'm ever going back there. Like, I've seen X, Y, or Z place that has like more of what I love in life, or whatever the case is. Like, how was that for you?
I never expected to be here. And we're sort of kicking around this idea of being a hero or the hero's journey. And it's really interesting because part of the hero's journey as the framework is the hero sort of returns home. And I always thought that didn't necessarily mean like I had to come back to where I was born. But there has been this sort of like very long, decades-long cycle of living in different places in America, different places in the world. In the States, I've lived in Colorado and Montana and Minnesota, and abroad. I've lived in Asia and Europe mostly, and then coming back here, I run into people out, if I'm grocery shopping, people that knew me in high school, and it's wild to sort of have that. It's a big city, 3 million people, but it feels like a small town because every time I'm out, I see somebody I know, which is actually really nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's overall, it's good to be back, huh?
Yeah. And my friend and I were talking about this the other day. Like you try to plan your life and then it just ends up taking crazy turns, which is, probably crazier than whatever you planned. And as a good traveler, as a good adventurer, you just kind of roll with it. I really wanted to sort of give some stability to my kids and wife, instead of just because I talked to a lot of friends when I was starting to become a parent, military kids who traveled a lot, and most of them hated it. A few of them really loved it, and they accredited their charisma to moving around a lot. But they had a really strong family unit, and if they hadn't have had great parents and brothers and sisters that they were traveling with, it would have been hard for them. But so I wanted to strike this balance of traveling a bunch when they're younger and probably doing a full year of travel sort of in between elementary and high school. That's my current thinking. But then also one of the greatest things in life is long-term friendships, and you can't. I still have friends from when I was a kid, and you can't go back and sort of get those. So you have to have the opportunity to build them in elementary and high school, which is important as well, I think.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's something that I've been thinking about a lot as well as a parent around the same age kids that you have. Yeah, the last couple of weeks, in fact. So this is like spot on with what's going on in my brain. By the way, you mentioned, I will just tease this out. We are going to talk about and share some tips on how to become the hero in your own life. And I feel like this is like an ongoing process because we go through, ups and downs and up mountains and into valleys or whatever metaphors you want to use in life. So this is like an ongoing thing. And I know you have some tips to share around this. And I always try to give some good new perspectives on the show. So I'm excited to get into those. But I want to stay on this for a minute because this kind of goes along with, I feel like a lot of travelers, the mentality is, or even if it's not in the beginning, it can more easily become this unconventional approach to life because you just kind of naturally, you go to different countries and you start to understand, people are living a different way, or they do this differently, or this is actually better than they do it at home. If you're going to get into the comparison game, or it's just, it's a more of a relaxed vibe. People aren't stressed here. Like here in Norway where I live, they have healthcare taken care of. So people are just generally less stressed because they don't have to worry about that. So it's all these things. And you realize every society in this whole thing is just basically a made up thing, right? So then you're all right, well, how do I process that? And then incorporate that into my own life. And that's one thing, but then it's another thing when you have kids and you're all right, well, how do I set them up to kind of be prepared for the next version of whatever the world's going to be when they're adults? And, I've been struggling with this too, because I sort of have the same plan as you, this idea of start with a year, a gap year type thing at some point when they're a little bit older. And then if they want to continue it on, maybe we continue it on. We have to just see. I've been reading about unschooling and some of these ideas around getting them out of school and giving them education in a different way, because I agree with everything that you just said. I grew up in the same way, in the same place, having friends, lifelong friends and things like that. But I also see the value in the other side, and I'm sure you do too after traveling yourself and having so many conversations with other travelers. So it's hard to settle these debates in your head sometimes. You know what I mean?
And, that's where I think people get into trouble, parents or entrepreneurs. And, maybe this is one of the topics we're going to hit on, but people try to think their way out of the problems. Sometimes that works. That works when you're dealing with picking a school or picking a place to travel and then doing all the planning. But then so we have a nomad that's staying with us right now. He's been here for a month. He's going to stay for another month. But he's should I go to Mexico? Should I go to Canada? Where am I going to go next? And he's trying to do the pros and cons, all the benefits of all these different places, and you get sort of lost in the sorting process, when a lot of times people would benefit from just stop the thinking and just go with the right decision, because you already know what the right decision is, but you're going to try to rationalize it, or maybe like it's too far in advance. You're wasting time chewing on a thing that's like way down the road, and it's taking you away from sort of being at peace in the moment. Because oh my gosh, what are my kids going to do in high school? Well, we have no idea. That's a really long, a decade from now, we might be an interplanetary species. I don't know. I'm actually, this is kind of funny. I'm parenting like my kid will be a galactic ambassador. Like perhaps instead of being a nomad on Earth, we'll be like going to other planets. So what types of skills and how would you raise a kid knowing that? And so this is a fun little game I've been playing with myself of like, what if we are going to be interplanetary?
What is the top skill you have to teach them? Like how to light a fire or something?
Astrophysics? I don't know.
You don't know, because if the atmosphere is different, you might not even be able to have fire there. Who knows? That's an interesting approach, man. That's like a wild kind of reframing in totally different parenting lens to go through. I have to chew on that. Speaking of chewing on stuff, right? Mentally. No, I hear you, man. Like it's, and there is no right decision, like in the grand scheme of things, right? I mean, you feel like you could say, all right, well, I'm setting my kids up for these friendships. And then, they, get the wrong quote unquote friends. And next thing you know, they go to jail because they're get caught up with, you know what I mean? Like it's just, you can never truly know how things are going to play out. So just kind of, I feel like with a lot of things, it's just about taking an action and doing it, and then just like taking it as an experience, as opposed to trying to, think all of the angles and possibilities and things. And on your website, you kind of told a little bit about your story. It just said, I'll just quote it here. After getting fired from numerous jobs, dropping out of my PhD program, recovering from failed marriage, I realized I had been living someone else's dream. I set out to construct a career and lifestyle that would let me be the explorer and teacher that I was always meant to be. I asked myself, what does it look like to be the hero of your own life? I'd just love to hear more about that transitional period in your life and how you kind of came out of it.
Yeah, and this is really interesting. So I had what most people would consider to be sort of a bunch of bad stuff. I considered it at the time to be a bunch of bad stuff happening all at once. What maybe I didn't mention in there is I lost my house to a flood. I had this traumatic brain injury. Wasn't sure I was going to survive. It was actually a blood clot. So like a stroke, but in the venous side. So, I had this headache for weeks, and it was just getting worse and worse. And I was like, obviously one of those guys is just going to try to tough it through until essentially I was unfunctioning. And so finally I went to the hospital. And I was even the day I was there, I was kind of joking around. I was getting a CAT scan. They're like, we're just going to look and see if anything's going on, but it's probably nothing. And I was like, yeah, it's probably nothing. And then as I was driving home, I got a call. They're like, you need to come immediately. Like you could be dying right now. Come back. And as soon as I got there, they stabbed me with this stuff that's like a blood thinner so that you don't have any further clots. But this clot was like slowly marching towards from my brain towards my heart. And it was like very, very shocking. Survivability rate was only, like 20% chance of survival. And after,
but how long was it a 20% chance of survival? Like, was there a window where you're like,
they basically were like, you should be dead, already. They're like, we've never seen anyone. First of all, it's usually only in women. These guys had never heard or seen of this happening to a man. So it's sort of a gendered, more common in genders. Actually, Hillary Clinton got the exact same thing at the exact same time that I did. So hers was all in the news. Anyway, but so, that facing my mortality in that sense, made me consider like, if I'm going to be dying, am I in the right spot? And then when I didn't die, I was like, okay, I can choose, I can pick anything that I want to do. And so I looked, my relationship and my career trajectory. I sort of on track to become a research scientist. And it just seemed like a very, on the career side, it seemed, wow, my friends spent 20 years sort of fighting to become a professor, and then they sort of have to fight for 1% funding rate, and basically their whole career is a fight. And I was like, that just sounds really hard. And I was in this very obscure field, researching the beginnings of life on Earth. I was working in Yellowstone in the hot springs, and really cool work. But also, like, what is the contribution to humanity? Like, what good is this? Like, I discovered a new species. I discovered a new virus that lives in boiling acid, and it's like, how cool is that? It's exactly what I wanted to do. And I couldn't figure out, like, really what the value was, other than just for me to have that experience. And so I started sort of reconsidering many things in my life trajectory, because I didn't have a house anymore. Once I dropped out of my PhD, I didn't have a career anymore. Once my marriage, it only lasted a year. So once we split up, I didn't have a relationship anymore. So I had this totally clean slate. And it was, I think when I got past the very lowest moment of it, which was, all alone with food poisoning in the middle of nowhere in Indonesia, I was like, oh, this is the worst. Like, nobody even knows I'm here. Once I got past that point, I was like, I'm free. I can be who I want. I can do what I want. And I started, just sort of building from there. How do I want to show up? Do I want to have a business? Do I want to work for somebody else? Where do I want to live? And it became this process of sort of creating myself fresh from my late 20s, which has been so much fun to sort of do it all over again, because I think what you alluded to is that we have these programs or conditionings, like things that we think we should be doing, or life scripts that we're following sort of unconsciously, and that can work. You can be quite happy, but a lot of those scripts were written a long, long time ago. Maybe your parents are operating from the scripts their parents had, and your grandparents, and so you might be operating from a script that was written 180 years ago. Well, that's not super relevant today, so you might as well write a new script for yourself.
Yeah, I like that you used the word fun, because when you're in that position, there's a variety of emotions all the time throughout the day. I think everybody can relate to this, because we've all been through various transitional periods in our lives, and I think some of those result in some of our all-time lows, right? Like, I think everybody's experienced those. But that idea of rather than taking it as, it's if you're able to kind of in the moment look at the opportunities and think, okay, well, it could be fun to reinvent myself, as opposed to thinking, well, like, what am I going to do now? Like, I have no identity. I have no job. It's just like, it's kind of where you put your focus, right? And that's not to say that those emotions don't come up and you don't have those feelings or thoughts. This is at least in my experience. But yeah, getting some tools to kind of pull yourself out of that. I guess that's kind of the point of today's show, because if you're listening to this and you're, maybe you're like ramping up to quit your job and travel after COVID, or you're thinking about starting a business, or like maybe nothing's happening right now, but chances are in like 6 months or a year or whenever, like there'll be this other transitional period. I feel like these things pop up consistently throughout life, and it's kind of nice to, have some kind of things to work with. And that's why I was really excited to talk to you, because I know you do a lot of coaching, and you've had your own journey that we just described, and you've helped some other people with their journeys. So becoming a hero in your own life as like a sort of a basis for being the next best version of yourself, or being the best version of yourself on a daily basis, as much as you can be. What is some of the advice that you would give to others that are going through like a big transitional period? It doesn't have to be obviously similar to yours. Everybody has their own things.
Yeah.
But
what's coming up for me is this experience of this sort of profound realization. One day I was motorbiking around Bali, and I pulled up to the beach, and I was like, I don't know who I am. I have no identity. Like, I'm just here in this moment. I've sort of lost touch with my past at that moment, and I was like, I can be anybody. I can do anything. And so there was this, I started saying, what do I want to build? But working more from, how do I just want to show up? Who do I want to be? And just starting from an identity level. And when you think about it, think about a smoker, for example. Like they don't, you don't necessarily have to decide, okay, today I'm going to be a smoker again. And, it's just part of your identity. Or being a non-smoker. It's just, you don't have to decide every day to not smoke if you're a non-smoker. It's just natural. So once you have the identity, if I have the identity of I'm an adventurer or I'm an entrepreneur or I'm a funny guy, then all of the things that you do are just in line with that identity. So your habits, the things that you think about, who you interact with, all these things sort of follow naturally. So working from an identity place rather than, I think, especially in the West, we have this sort of hustle culture. Like you got to do all this stuff so that you can then be somebody, so that you can have something. But it's really a backwards approach. So starting with who do I want to be, and then that will just bring into your life the stuff. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, eventually you'll have a cool business and a high income and all these things. But just start being and thinking and acting like an entrepreneur in the first place.
Is that identity, or is that identifying your core values and using them as an anchor?
I would say the values, you can choose the values, and they may be in line with the identity. And when you're doing things each day that are aligned with your values, then you're obviously going to be happier more frequently. But the identity is sort of separate, and that's really a place to start from. So say you want to, I don't know, a lot of people make New Year's resolutions. So say you want to be a fit person. Your identity level might be like, I'm someone who enjoys working out. I'm someone who it's easy for me to acquire fitness or health related habits. I'm the type of person that is able to structure their day in a way where I always get my workout and eat healthy. So working from that level, and once you sort of own that, then all those things become easy. And so you may have a value of feeling great, or you may have a value of getting to move your body, and that's tied in with the identity, but they're slightly separate, I would say.
Yeah. So that approach is kind of like the thing that jumped out to me. It's this idea of, rather than sort of trying to become a particular type of person over time, it's more about just like staking your claim as that person right away, right? It's be like, all right, like I'm just, even if you're kind of like having to tell yourself and it feels like a lie in the beginning, eventually maybe it feels like the truth, right? It's like, all right, I'm an outdoor enthusiast, even though you just want to get outdoors more, but you don't really do it. But just by kind of staking your claim as that type of person, then the actions follow.
Yeah, and here's the crazy thing is that our brain can't really tell the difference between sort of a daydream and the actual physical reality we see, and sort of interpret it all as equally true. And so you can go in, and I teach this to my clients. You can go in through self-hypnosis, like a guided audio or something like that, and you can actually tinker with your identity from the hypnotic state or from the sort of like daydreamy state, and you can reshape your identity, in a few minutes each day, to sort of be the person you want. And then the things you do, all of a sudden, a few weeks of doing this, you're like, okay, it's just natural for me to plan day hikes or plan little adventures. And wow, I'm just showing up the way that I program myself. And so you're getting in there in your subconscious mind, and really working with the subconscious rather than the sort of the thinking mind.
You have this interesting cross section with your work. It kind of meets at the crossroads of like science and metaphysics or spirituality, whatever you want to call it, and travel in some senses, right? Or adventure. And for a lot of people, that's travel. I do want to talk about that a little bit, but I want to get into these 5 tips that kind of tie in with this overall theme of how to become the hero in your own life kind of consistently. And I think you call them thought reversals. Is that right?
Yeah, this is a concept that I teach my business clients. And a thought reversal basically is zig when everybody else is zagging, or what is the prevailing wisdom, and is that really true? It's kind of like the scripts we were talking about. And so there's something that I see a lot, and so part of the reason we travel is right because we think it'll make our lives better in some way. It'll make us more happy or full of joy and wonder and all these things. And in the West, we have this focus on money, and everyone's in entrepreneurship. Everyone's trying to hustle and work hard and earn more so that you can get the things and the house and all these things. It's still this social sort of program that we're operating under. And so I was thinking about that, and I think that people's focus on money, and I'll just sort of a catchy tagline would be like, your focus on money is keeping you poor. Well, what does that mean? If we look at what is abundance? Abundance is being able to do what you want when you want to do it, or do what you need when you need to do it. And money enables that, of course. But there's all these other elements that if you look at a good traveler or a good adventurer, they're using many more of these elements. And I see our relationships as opening the door to most of the ways that you can get abundance. So there's other, so if we look at that idea of being able to do what you need to do when you need to do it, somebody could just do it for you, right? They could just say, I'm just going to give you this house, or I'm just going to give you this suitcase instead of you going out and buying it. So, right, there's gifts and there's exchange. There's barter, right? So if you're a coach and somebody else is a healer, you could just swap without any money being exchanged. So there's trade, there's ideas. So there's your own creativity, but there's also access to ideas through a podcast like this one, or a mentor, or a business mastermind, or something like that. So maybe abundance is a combination of the right idea, the right relationship, and a little bit of money. And that's how you do the thing you need to do when you need to do it.
So I guess the kind of takeaway there is money isn't always the answer to achieve the abundance that you're looking for.
Right. And there's
so maybe
also
just thinking about it in a different way. Like, how can I maybe get this without? I remember I interviewed a guy once who, like, he started with like a paper clip. I don't know. There was another guy that did. There were a couple guys that traded from
the trading. Yes.
Yeah. Like a paper clip. And then they ended up like getting a house in Hawaii at the end or something. So, and just by trading.
We played that game. I thought when I was first dating my wife, we actually played that game as sort of like a couple's relationship building game. And we ended up, we made like a handful of trades, not all the way to a house, but we ended up getting sort of the highest thing we got was like a nice Arc'teryx jacket, like a $400 ski jacket, which was pretty cool, starting with it was a rubber band instead of a paper clip. But that was a really fun game, right? And there's no money involved at all. But then another part of it was sort of good luck, or identifying opportunities, or being in the right place at the right time. And there's this element of synchronicity that when you're looking for it and when you're paying attention is just as useful for overall abundance as money and these other things.
All right, cool. What's the next one on the list?
We talked a little bit about how we were planning for the future, and how we were trying to sort of either decide where to go with writing a pros and cons list, or thinking our way through business decisions or parenting decisions. And what I've come to realize recently is that you might have heard of the law of attraction or manifestation, and when people want something in their life, a lot of times there's all kinds of thoughts that come up, like, okay, I want a new house, or I want to be able to move abroad, or I want to take this trip. But then immediately what comes up is, can I afford that, or how do I make it happen, or am I allowed to have that, or who am I to want this beautiful new car, or any of these things, right? And you immediately get into all this like mental chatter that sort of naturally comes up. But if you can leave that behind, if you can just stop worrying about how to solve the problem will generally just solve itself. And so working from a place, going back to identity, right? Like who do I need to be, and how do I need to feel? Like, let's say I already had that nice car. What does it feel like to be that person? And just sort of living your life from there. So one thing that I would like would be a sweet Lamborghini. And so what does it feel like to be somebody who pulls up to a place?
Would you though? Would you like a sweet Lamborghini?
I would really like a sweet Lamborghini. Ideally, slightly in the future. So the hover Lamborghini.
Oh yeah, okay.
But I think they look pretty cool. So, but the best part about having a Lamborghini would be me pulling up to a parking lot and people be like, "Dude, nice car." I'd be like, "Yeah, I love it," and just like having this friendly interaction with people and just sort of enjoying life. And so I can do that right now. I can pull up in my cream-colored minivan and be like, "Hey guys, like life's so cool," and just be that person with the rad Lamborghini before it arrives. And stop sort of worrying about all the steps, because again, life is so unpredictable. You can't sort of think out all the steps. And you know what? The universe might have different plans. It might get me a Lamborghini much sooner than I was planning. Somebody might leave one to me in their will, or I might win a raffle, or who knows, right? When you try to sort of outthink the universe, you're combating against infinite possibilities. So. And so a lot of people are just really working on the mental side, the chatter. And as a scientist, I fall into that trap as well. I'm like, okay, what are all the steps? How am I going to be a millionaire? Okay, step one. Like, oh my gosh, there's 10,000 steps to being a millionaire. But instead of who do I need to be a millionaire? Well, that's much more straightforward, because I can work from who would I be if I already had what I want: the fame, the riches, the podcast as big as yours, all these things. So
I do feel like the other approach has its place though too, because on some level there are certain problems that they will not solve themselves, right, unless you think through them, because they need attention in some way, right? Like the bill doesn't go away because you just want the problem to solve itself. But incorporating the other elements that you're talking about it's like, don't just think through it. When things seem to work out the best, there's this sort of combination of practicality and then like, it's like a duality, right? It's like practicality and non-thinking, like sort of simultaneously in some way, that kind of helps the solution come more organically, I guess, is the only way I could describe it in words, perhaps. Because some things I think through, and then that can be more of a struggle. Sometimes it's easy. And then taking the other approach, sometimes things just magically happen. And it's like, wow, that like actually just happened and I didn't have to do anything to fix that. Actually, I'll give you a great example. I just got my box of stuff from Colorado. I used to live there, and then I moved to Norway, and I still had like this place, and I was renting it out, and now I sold it, and I got my stuff, or my friends got my stuff down to like 2 boxes, and they sent it to me. Anyway, I have like this coffee maker here, this AeroPress coffee maker, and it's got a little filter, and the filter just disappeared. It's like, how could this filter disappear? You can't buy these filters, whatever. I forgot I had one in Colorado, so the box came up, and there was an AeroPress in it. I was like, hey, I've got the filter now, like that was an example of like, oh, cool. This problem like solved itself and I didn't have to do anything to solve it, and those types of things happen to me. But then there's the other side where it's like certain things have to be thought through. And I think you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah. So if you're like writing an email out to your newsletter, right, you're writing copy, or you're thinking about how to rebrand or something like that, right? You're thinking through the option, what are the best ways to say this, and really using your focus. But then that's sort of, if you just let the problem go, right, all of a sudden now you have a filter. And as I was learning about all this stuff last year, as my experience as a scientist, I was really interested in sort of these magical things that I've been experiencing around the world, and sort of what the scientific underpinnings were. So I spent the last few years studying that. And I did this experiment last year of what if I didn't think about money at all? What if I just sort of stopped thinking about bills for a month and not sort of like planning, So I set everything up to be automated, and then I didn't look at my bank account or money coming in or out, except that every day money just arrived from some crazy, surprising source. It was like some of it was clients, but some of it was there was this. This is so funny. If you ever played Monopoly, there's this card that says bank error in your favor. You get $100. That happened to me. I got a bank error in my favor. I was like, what? And then it was like, you won a beauty contest, $15. All this weird started happening. So for 16 days in a row, last year, with sort of by stopping thinking about money arrived from some unknown source for 16 days in a row. And I was just like, this is so crazy how this is working. And it was just like really amplifying that sort of good luck, serendipity, trusting side of things. And all those amounted to probably, let's say, 20 grand of money that I couldn't have sort of planned or thought through. And that sort of really validated for me sort of how these things can happen without you actually setting it up or without you planning for it to happen.
So what was the scientific underpinning that you discovered around that?
Well, so one of the fundamental laws of the universe, the law of attraction, is that it's working no matter. So whatever you have in your life, you have attracted into your life. And so if there's a lack of something, you've attracted that into your life as well. And so when you're looking at your bank account and you're like, oh, I wish it were more, you're basically operating from a place, a level of consciousness where it's like, there's not enough. There's some fundamental flaw that I don't have enough money, enough security, enough safety. And because your attention is on that, because your focus is on not enough money, that's essentially creating on a quantum level, basically you're creating a quantum field with your thought. And so it like when you play a note on a piano and it would resonate with another piano at the same note, you're basically you're resonating with that same field. And so this thought pattern of not enough money is resonating with the field of not enough money, and you continue to get more not enough money. So if you, so there's actually two steps. One, stop thinking that thought. Then what is the thought you replace it? So most people would really benefit, and this is why I say stop thinking. If you're paying attention to the things in life that you don't have enough of or don't want in your life, you're essentially bringing more of them into your life. So just simply stop paying attention to those things is going to be the biggest step for so many people.
The first one, just to recap, was not focusing on the money, right? This is the thought reversal, right? If you're focusing on I forget how you phrased it. You can remind me.
I just, come up with these funny little headlines like focusing on money is keeping you broke.
Oh yeah, that's right. And number two, what's the headline for that one?
The headline for that is, let's say,
stop trying to think your way out of your problems. I think that's what it was. Yeah.
Yes. Stop thinking.
Okay. And then let's go with the third one.
And the third one would be, who would you be if you already had what you want?
Okay.
And working from there, because so much of it is about your attention. And we talked about how you can shift your identity by sort of hypnotizing yourself and tinkering in your subconscious and changing your identity, and that changes how you show up in the world. But how do you know what identity to pick? How do you know what identity you want to show up? Do you want to show up as an adventurer? Do you want to show up as sort of a wise parent? Do you want to what is the identity? And then you can simply look at, well, what are the kind of things that I sort of naturally want? And who would I be if I already had those? Who would I be if I already had the Lamborghini? Who would I be if I already had been to every country in the world? Who would I be if I already had $1 million? And what does that feel like if I think about it? If I was a millionaire, I'd feel very safe and secure in some ways. I would feel some pride of accomplishment. Well, I can just start being that way now. And so because there's so much of our life that's dictated by what we're paying attention to, if we are paying attention to how we want to show up instead of the lack in our bank account, well, then we're going to have so many things falling in line with just where we're placing our attention.
Okay, and let's just hear two more really quick, because not really quick, but you know what I mean. Because I had a couple more questions for you, not because I'm trying to rush you, but
yeah. Well, here's some things just to think about. Is that moment I talked about when I was on the motorbike and I had no identity, and how that was such a free moment. And then coming back here, my parents have like boxes of stuff from when I was a kid. Right. And so
it's like an identity slap in the face, right?
Yeah. And so it's like, well, that's not really my identity. So I would say, if you'll have more freedom, you'll have more power if you can detach yourself from your past. And the extreme would be just getting rid of all your possessions, right? And just becoming someone with no past. If the past is preventing you from being who you want to be, or if it's tying you down in some way, then what would it be like to just live in the past? Because the past really isn't real, right? Because all we have is just a continuum of present moments. And according to physics, time isn't even real. It's just like all exists all at the same time. So, just thinking about what if you were someone with no past and no past identity, then it allows you to sort of be fully present. And so that's another point, is just what would it be like to be someone with no past or no history? The fifth point I might throw out there that you probably haven't thought about is when I work with entrepreneurs, again, they're trying to, a lot of times, hustle and grind their way. They're trying to work their way through a problem. They're trying to spend 14 hours a day. And what happens is people get burnt out, especially if they're traveling, especially if they're doing the digital nomad thing, or they're trying to build a life, and they're, I just see this a lot. It's just like you could work your way into the ground if you just try to hustle to grow a business. But what you really can be doing, what's really going to accelerate you, is to be lazy. And I learned this from some of my CEO friends.
Everybody's cheering right now.
Yeah. Didn't think about that.
Be lazy. Yeah. I can get down with that.
And what I mean is that when you invest in creating more time for yourself, when you create systems for your business, or when you stop doing things that aren't important, or when you learn how to delegate or properly hire, all of these things. So some of my good CEO friends, they manage 100, 500 people in their companies. They're actually sitting down for focused work just a couple hours a day. And they're leaving time open for fortuitous conversations, or to have a difficult decision or something like that. And I remember reading about Obama when he was in office. He wouldn't make any decisions. He had this system where he would eat the same thing. He would do the same sort of workout time. He'd wear the same thing, a black suit every day or whatever it was. And so his first decision of the day was of sort of national or international importance. So he's not wasting any time on that frivolous stuff. And so he's being really lazy with the minor things. And you can do this in your own life, in your business, automate all your finances, prepare your meals for a week in advance, eat the same thing every day, and then have, if you're a business owner, you hire a VA, and everything they do, they systematize so that they can teach to somebody else, and your business will scale without you even having to lift a finger. And just really operating from this place of how would a lazy person do this. Lazy programmers. People say a good programmer is a lazy programmer because they won't try to, brute force it. They'll just figure out a solution that allows them to sort of like set it on autopilot. And then you free yourself up again for synchronicity, meeting the right people, having opportunities come into your lap, having space for ideas, creativity, and all of these things. So I would say a lazy entrepreneur will become a successful and rich entrepreneur.
A lot of the stuff, it ends up circling back to like the type of questions you ask yourself, right? So how do we ask ourselves better questions?
Yeah, because anytime you ask a question, your brain starts trying to find the answer. It's like, that's what coaching is a lot of times, is you're directing someone's attention with a question. So, a question that I might say while I'm coaching is, well, have you considered the consequences of doing it the same way as you've always done it? Oh, all of a sudden they're thinking in that direction. It's just you're pointing attention. So if you can master the questions you're asking yourself, then you can master your attention. And fundamentally, you are where your attention is.
So how do we do that? I mean, how do we go about asking ourselves better questions? Like, I'm somebody who wants to improve the questions I ask myself because I know that it will improve my life. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Questions. Obviously, you and I are both interviewers, and we get to play around with asking questions. I think probably the sort of the questions that people are asking themselves without thinking about, like, why am I so uncomfortable today, or why am I so broke, or why am I unhappy? Well, the answer is, just more reasons why you're unhappy. Rather, like, if you change the question, why am I so happy? Why is today so amazing? Why am I so lucky? Why, it's kind of in how you frame the question. And as you get into the practice or habit of framing things in let's just say a positive way, it rewires your brain. And for most people, the thoughts they're thinking today are very similar to the thoughts they thought yesterday. So, but if you sort of rewire the circuits, if you continually sort of put questions in there that lead to answers that you want, then eventually it just sort of happens. Sort of subconsciously, the questions just pop in. But that can take some habit building, some attention at first.
Yeah, I think awareness, a lot of this stuff comes back to awareness, right? If you're aware of the questions that you're asking yourself, or more aware of the fact that your internal dialogue is, part of that is made up of questions, right? And then what are those questions? And then it's like you have to almost become aware of those things first before you can even change them around, or even think about sort of reframing them. All this stuff's interesting because it's just, a lot of this is just happening inside of us, right? We can have a podcast on travel. It's not just about, hey, go see this and do that. It's a lot of what's happening when you travel is happening internally, right? And I think like some of the things that you mentioned today are things that travel can amplify, right? Like losing your identity, for example, or what if there was no, it's almost like there's a reason why I think the sort of travel stereotype for some, like that maybe solo travel is like, I'm going to go travel and find myself. And it's like, well, maybe not, but maybe some of these things that we talked about today are a bit more amplified. And because of that, you start to uncover some new parts of yourself, right? Like, you go to a new place and you're a solo traveler, like nobody knows who you are. You're a nobody. They're not associating you with a job or with any past that you've had whatsoever. It's just like kind of built in to travel in many ways, right? Which is why I think like travel can be a really powerful agent of change. I wouldn't say if you want that, but like if you're maybe open to it, but not expecting it.
Yeah, it's like shaking the snow globe in a sense. At home, you have this pattern, and it can be very freeing, right? If nobody's expecting you to be a certain way. But it also, right, as soon as you land in a place with a different culture, a different language, your brain is having to like, oh my gosh, it's learning all these things, just trying to make new patterns or trying to understand the world. And that gives you a head start in sort of reshaping the actual, again, working from what is the of how this all works. You get to start making new neural connections as soon as you land in a new country, which means you can start creating new patterns of thought.
And this is where your science kicks in, right? Because you're like, hey, I know this from a scientific perspective. This works. Like now you have scientific reasons to travel too. I'm just trying to give people as many excuses as they need or want to travel.
Yes, I love it. I appreciate that.
A couple more things, and then I'll let you go. What is something you've recently learned about yourself?
I'll just tell a little story to see if this kicks some ideas. I would really love to have special powers or magical abilities somehow ever since I was a kid. And I, try to do this all through science. We recently my wife and I took a little getaway to Sedona, which is supposedly full of magical vortexes, and people make pilgrimages there to experience these. And we went to every single vortex. I mapped it out. I was like, we're going to do it. And it was amazing. And I didn't feel a thing. But my wife, basically got this sort of vortex flu from going to these places. It was like an energetic overload for her. And what I learned was, she's much more sensitive or magical or in tune with, sort of other dimensions than I am. So I was really hoping to get some sort of superpowers from these vortexes, but really it was just like normal. I was just hiking and in the wilderness. That was fine.
Well, listen, watch your back, because if you if you don't do the vacuuming or something you're supposed to do, your wife's going to turn around and just start like. She might use some of those magic powers against you, man. That's all I'm saying. Watch. No, I'm kidding.
Yes. Well, she told me when we met, she was like, "Hey, I made you appear into my life," and I was like, "What?" She was like, "Yeah, I magically made you appear into my life." I was like, "Me? I was here all the time." She's like, "No." So,
wow, we should have pulled her onto the podcast to hear that story. That's great. Well, man, this was fun. A couple things. First, I just wanted to, maybe you could leave us with some of your thoughts around travel. Like if anybody's listening and you want to share some, just some of your best advice around travel, we could say maybe your best piece of advice around travel. And I'll just leave it open like that, because that can be a lot of things. And then you can let everybody know where they can find you and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, when we would move countries, especially across many time zones with the kids, my wife and I had this formula I made up. Basically, if you move, let's say 6 time zones, you need 6 days before you sort of integrate into the new place in terms of how your body, your circadian rhythms and all that stuff, going back to the biology of how you're operating. But what happens is you get into more arguments. You get into more frustration of like, oh, why isn't it working? And if you know ahead of time that you're just going to have a week of stuff not working well or arguments, then you can be a lot more kind to each other. You can give each other a lot more leeway. And I think there's some, because people try to force it. They try to, land on the ground and start seeing sights right away. And all of a sudden it's just like, overwhelming. So just being aware, right? You're a biological entity, and what can you do to sort of be kind to yourself in terms of in your relationships, but also just letting yourself land for even a week if you move to a new continent can make things much easier. So we've had a lot more peace when we start, let's say being more gentle in that respect. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, just kind of building in the mental buffer. Be like, all right, we know we get tired, when things are going to be a little crazy. I like the time zone rule. That kind of gives you a nice concrete sort of number to work with. Like 3 time zones, 3 days, 6 time zones, 6 days. Very cool. I haven't heard that before. Cool. Where can everybody find you? Yeah, DerekLoudermilk.com is my website. You can find the podcast, The Derek Loudermilk Show. From there, you can learn more about the work that I do with thought leaders, and also just a bunch of random fun facts about me and things like that.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate your time. Glad we finally got to do this and jam a bit on the mics, and look forward to keeping in touch. Go have some toasted raviolis for me one of these days.
Hey, it's the St. Louis treats. Yeah, Jason, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right, take care. There you have it. I want to thank Derek Loudermilk for stopping by the show. You can check out his website at derekloudermilk.com. We'll link up to everything in the show notes. And when Derek was talking about becoming the hero, as you heard the idea of reframing struggle as part of the process, I think is a pretty important one. It's not about avoiding the challenges, but just figuring out how we move through them. And if you are struggling with moving through challenges currently, I mean, in my experience, that's totally normal. But just having an awareness around that, right? And understanding, okay, well, yeah, I'm moving through something right now and this is hard, but this is part of the process. And if you want to equate it to travel, I think some of the most memorable travel experiences are the ones that were perhaps a struggle or challenging at the time, but we overcame them. Of course, we love the good memories too, you know, sitting on the beach and relaxing and, you know, snorkeling with the sea turtles and all that good stuff. But there are opportunities on the road that have allowed us to grow. And I know there are probably a bunch of them that are flashing through your own mind right now. And I recently heard the comic Jimmy Carr when he was talking about parenting. Somebody asked him about summing up what it means to be a good parent. And he said, this is kind of hit home for me as an adult. He said, hard life now, easy life later. Easy life now, hard life later. Again, referring to children. But the point, I think, is that we as humans, we need to face struggles and overcome them. And so just incorporating that as part of your own hero's journey, I think, or at least I've found, you know, the realization that everything comes with a set of struggles, and that as long as I'm sort of choosing that path willingly, I'm choosing to face those struggles. So when they come up, they kind of just, it makes it a little bit more manageable because I am choosing this path. When I have struggles, for example, in my business, I realize, well, this is the path I've chosen, right? If I chose the path of working a full-time job, then those would come with their own sets of struggles, and I would be choosing those struggles, right? We can never see those exact struggles coming down the pipe, but just kind of like hitting them and then moving through them, it just makes it easier for me to remember that all of these things, whatever we choose, are going to come with challenges and struggles. And if we can build an awareness around that and move through that, for me, it makes it easier to move through that. So anyway, I just thought I would share a few thoughts on that coming out of this one. And now I'm going to leave you with a quote. This one from Robert Crawford. I don't know who he is, but I like this quote. He said, "Being challenged in life is inevitable. Being defeated is optional." Thank you for listening. By the way, if you haven't signed up yet, now's a good time to do it. zerototravel.com/newsletter. Sign up for our free newsletter over there. Keep in touch on all of the latest and greatest things happening off the pod. Join the community over there. Thank you so much for listening. Exciting stuff coming your way on the podcast, so I hope you choose to continue to tune in. Thank you so much for your presence here and in this community. Very much appreciated, and have a great day. See you next time. Peace and love to you and yours. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by zerototravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.